Have you ever trusted someone so completely that you'd sign anything they handed you, no questions asked? That was me, and the man I trusted wasn't just my business partner. He was my best friend. My name's Ethan Walker, 42, born and raised in Denver, Colorado. I'm not a movie villain or a hero, just a guy who believed hard work and loyalty still meant something. For 15 years, I ran a small construction company with my partner, Ryan Hale. We built homes, literally, and I thought we were building a future together too. We met back in college, both broke, both dreaming of something bigger. Ryan was the talker, the smooth one who could sell a raincoat to a desert nomad. I was the planner, the one with dirt under his nails and spreadsheets on his laptop. Together we worked like clockwork, his words, my work. And for years, it paid off. By 2018, Walker & Hale Contracting had grown from 2 guys in a rusty pickup truck to a firm bidding on city contracts. We were finally breaking even, maybe even thriving. And that's when the cracks started showing. So faint at first, I mistook them for shadows. It began with little things. Ryan started taking calls outside during meetings. He'd close the door when the city inspector came by. Once, I saw a folder on his desk, confidential blueprints from a project we hadn't even bid on yet. When I asked, he laughed it off, said it was just research. I wanted to believe him. I really did, because when you've built something brick by brick with someone, the last thing you want to imagine is that they're chiseling it apart behind your back. But denial only works until reality knocks, and that knock came one Thursday morning. It was raining hard. The kind of cold, heavy rain that makes every mistake feel louder. I'd been reviewing our accounts when I noticed a number that didn't add up. A payment, $250,000, had been transferred to a consulting firm I didn't recognize. I checked again. The signature on the approval line was mine, except I'd never signed it. I remember sitting there, the screen light flickering on my face, thinking maybe I'd gone crazy. Maybe I'd forgotten. Maybe I'd signed it weeks ago. I scrolled through the digital records, and that's when I saw it. The signature was a copy. My copy, Ryan had taken my digital signature and used it to move money. Our money. I wanted to call him right then, demand an explanation, but something inside me said, don't. Not yet. Because once you confront a snake, it hides its skin. Instead, I started watching. Over the next 2 weeks, I noticed everything I'd missed before. New shoes, a new watch, lunch meetings with the same consultants listed on the transfer. He'd come in later and leave earlier, always smiling, always saying, "We're almost there, Ethan. Big things coming." He was right about one thing. Big things were coming. Just not the kind he expected. The real punch came a month later at a city development gala. Ryan introduced me to a councilman I'd never met. "This is Ethan," he said. "He's stepping away from operations soon, but I'll keep you updated on the downtown project." Stepping away. That was the first I'd heard of it. I smiled, shook hands, played the part. But inside, it felt like someone had poured cement in my chest. That night, I went home, opened the company email, and started digging deeper. Buried in the archives were drafts of contracts, ones I'd never seen, stating that Ryan would retain majority control of Walker and Hale while I pursued independent ventures. It even had my digital initials at the bottom. He hadn't just stolen money. He'd stolen me, my name, my work, my future. For the next few hours, I just sat in my office, staring at the city lights through the rain. The hum of the street outside felt distant, like I was underwater. 15 years of sweat and trust, and he'd traded it for a bigger paycheck and a new title. But betrayal is strange. It doesn't explode all at once. It leaks. It seeps into every corner of your thoughts until nothing feels solid anymore. The next morning, I walked into the office like nothing had happened. Ryan greeted me with his usual grin, tossing me a coffee. "Big day, partner," he said. Partner. I watched him joke with the team, take calls, charm clients, and all I could think was how easily he'd worn that mask. How many times had he looked me in the eye while planning his exit? That day I didn't confront him. I smiled, I nodded, even laughed at his stupid jokes, because something colder had started forming inside me. a thought that I wasn't ready to say out loud yet. I wasn't going to call the police. I wasn't going to sue. No, if Ryan wanted to play games, I'd show him what losing really looked like. That night, I sat in my pickup truck outside our office, engine off, lights dimmed. Through the rain-streaked glass, I could see him inside, talking on the phone, pacing, laughing. He didn't look like a friend. He looked like a man rehearsing his freedom, and that's when the idea came. Not revenge, at least not yet. Something simpler. Let him think he's winning, because sometimes the sweetest way to break a man isn't by fighting him. It's by letting him build his own fall. So I started taking notes. Every lie, every forged signature, every whisper I wasn't supposed to hear. The funny thing about betrayal is, it wakes you up sharper than any alarm ever could. And I was wide awake now. Ryan thought he'd already buried me under his success. But he'd forgotten something about construction. Even the strongest structure collapses when the foundation cracks. And I was about to make sure his did. I didn't sleep much after that night in the truck. My mind kept replaying every moment I'd laughed with Ryan, every time I'd called him brother, every contract I'd signed while trusting his smile. But anger without direction is just noise. I needed a plan, one that wouldn't blow back on the people who depended on our paychecks, and one that wouldn't get me dragged into a fight I couldn't win. So I started small, quiet, clean. The first person I approached wasn't a lawyer. It was Maya, our office manager, the kind of person who could find a single missing receipt in a sea of paper. She'd been with us 8 years, steady as a metronome, invisible when things worked, a storm when they didn't. I asked if she could help me tighten some records. I said it like we were doing a routine audit. She didn't ask questions. She just nodded and got to work. We pulled vendor lists, payroll, and digital access logs. Maya flagged something strange right away. A new vendor, Hale Strategic, added 3 months ago, approved to bill consulting time on all active jobs. There were 4 invoices, $35,000, $62,000, $78,000, and $75,000, each stamped paid with my initials. I didn't say anything. I just felt that cement in my chest harden. Do you know them? Maya asked. I do now, I said. I didn't fire off an email. I didn't confront Ryan. I followed the numbers. A friend of mine from church, Luis, is a CPA who's seen enough small businesses to write a book called How Not to Get Cheated. I took him out for coffee at a little place on Colfax, the kind with chipped mugs and a bell that rings when the door opens. I told him the story like I was telling him about a bad roof leak, calm, boring, facts only. He listened, hands around his mug. And then he said something that moved everything into place. If he used your signature, there's a trail. Even when they think there isn't, there always is. He gave me a list, simple, practical steps. Pull the IP access logs from our e-sign platform. Check metadata on old PDFs to see who edited what and when. Ask the bank for view-only forensic statements. Line items with timestamps and device fingerprints. Don't tip him off. Not yet. I worked late, lights off, shades closed. Maya found the admin credentials nobody ever asks for. We exported everything. The logs showed something I'd suspected but didn't want to believe. Multiple approvals by Ethan Walker from a device that never touched my hands. Ryan's office desktop after hours. The timestamps were always later, always after the cleaning crew left. The kind of quiet time when a man sits still and makes choices. Next, I called the bank. I didn't accuse anyone. I said we were preparing for an external audit. We requested a dual control review, which is a fancy way of saying, show me who actually moved our money. The transaction receipts for the big transfers were authorized by a remembered credential from my old phone, one I'd retired 2 years ago. Someone had kept that credential alive. Can I freeze anything? I asked the banker. You can, but it'll alert anyone who's expecting money, she said. If this is fraud, you want to know how far it goes first. I thanked her. She lowered her voice on the phone and said, good luck, Mr. Walker. Sometimes kindness sounds like that. Now I needed proof strong enough that I wouldn't have to raise my voice. Strong enough to stand in a room of people who didn't know me and still make sense. So I built a test. We had a bid coming up for a downtown parking structure, big contract. Lots of eyes, the kind of job that makes a company look grown. I drafted a memo about a new subcontractor evaluation. In it, I listed 3 real companies we'd used before, and one fake name I invented, North Pine Logistics, LLC. North Pine didn't exist. There was no address, no phone number, nothing. I set the file permissions so that if any line left our server, I'd get a ping. Call it a footprint in wet concrete. Then I printed a clean copy with a tiny watermark, my own little breadcrumb, barely visible unless you held the page under a desk lamp. I placed that copy in Ryan's inbox after hours. 4 days later, North Pine Logistics appeared as a recommended vendor in an email to a city liaison. The sender address said it came from our company account. The watermark on the PDF? Unmistakable. The file name had been changed to Final. There it was. Proof that information was being packaged and passed like favors at a backyard barbecue. If Ryan was feeding names to friends for a cut, I wanted him comfortable. I wanted him certain, so I made sure to play my part. A little late to meetings, tired, grateful for his help. When he tried to talk big picture, I nodded and let him do most of the talking. He was so used to hearing himself win that he didn't hear me listening. The next move wasn't sexy, but it was necessary. I met with our surety bond agent, the woman who guaranteed our work to the city. I told her we were adjusting internal controls for compliance. We added a clause, routine on paper, that any new vendor over $25,000 must be approved by 2 physical signatures in ink. No digital approvals, no exceptions. She smiled and said, "Smart." I walked out and felt air in my lungs for the first time in weeks. Back at the office, Ryan announced a surprise. We were streamlining approvals to move faster on the downtown job. He proposed a policy. If one partner's out, the other can sign a loan. He said it to the room like it was about speed. He glanced my way like it was support. I gave him nothing but a slow nod. The team clapped. We moved on. Later that night, I drafted a different document, the kind of simple piece of paper that looks friendly until it doesn't. It was a personal indemnity acknowledgement, standard legal language stating that any signatory taking unilateral financial action would assume personal responsibility if those actions violated policy or law. I slid it into a stack of routine forms on his Monday clipboard. Expense approvals, vendor updates, calendar notes. He signed everything like he always did without looking. Checkmate is quiet at first. Meanwhile, Louise helped me assemble a clean folder. Access logs, bank device fingerprints, invoice timelines, vendor pings, the watermark proof, and the indemnity page with Ryan's signature. We didn't label the folder evidence. We called it Project Ledger Downtown. If someone found it, it wouldn't scream. It would whisper. Better that way. There was one more knot to tie. The city's ethics office. Denver takes procurement seriously. They don't like cozy arrangements in dark corners. I scheduled a process walkthrough with a compliance officer named Andrea. Polite, thorough, the kind of person who can tell when someone is hiding a pebble in their shoe by the way they walk. I brought 2 versions of our vendor list, the public file and the forensics, with highlights. I didn't accuse Ryan by name. I described inconsistencies and asked for best practices. Andrea listened, asked measured questions, and finally said, "If what you're describing is accurate, it's not a small issue. I'll attend your pre-award review personally." I left her building with an appointment card and a feeling I hadn't felt in months. Control. But revenge isn't about fireworks. It's about gravity. You remove the one beam everything is leaning on, and then you wait. The fall takes care of itself. The day before the pre-award review, Ryan strutted into the office with that campaign trail smile. He slapped my back and said, "This is it, partner. Downtown is ours. After this, we're national." He said we, but his eyes said me. He headed into the conference room to rehearse with the team. I watched him through the glass wall, hands moving, jokes landing, people nodding. He was a great performer. I had spent years admiring the show. Maya slid beside me and whispered, "You sure about tomorrow?" I nodded, "I'm sure." That night I stayed late one last time. I walked the halls, touched the backs of chairs, straightened a stack of project folders. This company had been my life. My name was on the trucks, but it was also in the calluses on everyone's hands. I didn't want to burn it down to punish one man. I wanted to save it from him. On my desk, I placed 2 envelopes. The first, addressed to Andrea, City Ethics, sealed with the clean folder of logs and timelines. The second, addressed to Ryan, containing a single page, a copy of the indemnity acknowledgement he'd signed, and a sticky note with 5 words. "You built this." Not me. I slept for 3 hours, woke before the sun, and put on the same navy blazer I'd worn when we won our first real contract. On the drive downtown, the mountains were black cutouts against a pale sky. Denver was waking up. So was I. The pre-award room was cold, bright, and unforgiving. Rows of chairs, a projector that hummed like a bee, a long table where city folks shuffled papers and sipped bad coffee. Ryan walked in like a man headed to a victory parade. He winked at me, leaned close, and whispered, "Try to look excited." I smiled. "Oh, I am." Andrea entered and took a seat in the front row. Ryan didn't recognize her. I did. The presentation began. Ryan talked about our track record, our crews, our timelines. He was smooth, confident, almost musical. When he queued up the vendor slide, the one with the recommended partners, I watched his finger hover over the clicker. "Any questions so far?" he asked the room. Andrea raised her hand, and right there, before his smile could set, before he could steer the moment with a joke, the door opened behind us. A courier stepped in, placed a sealed envelope on the committee table, and walked out without a word. Andrea nodded to the chair, slid the envelope open, and lifted the first page, the one with the watermark and the logs and the dates. She looked up at Ryan. "Mr. Hale," she said, calm as a winter morning. "I do have a question." Ryan froze. Halfway between confidence and concern, Andrea turned a page. "Can you explain why a non-existent vendor, North Pine Logistics, appears in your internal routing documents and in communications to this committee?" The room went quiet enough to hear the projector fan. I didn't look at Ryan. I looked at the screen. I looked at the city seal. I looked at the people from our team who had trusted both of us for years. This wasn't about a speech anymore. This was about truth. Ryan cleared his throat, mouth already forming a lie. "I'm not sure." Andrea lifted a hand, gentle but firm. "We'll take a brief recess." She stood, gathered the pages, and motioned toward a side room. As he walked past me, Ryan leaned in just enough for me to hear it. "What did you do?" I kept my eyes on the table, on the neat line where wood meets edge. "Nothing you didn't start," I said. The door to the side room closed behind them with a soft click, and just like that, the fall began. The conference room felt smaller after the door closed behind Ryan and the ethics officer. The air was thin, charged with something between dread and inevitability. Our team sat frozen, pretending to check emails or sip coffee that had long gone cold. I didn't move. I just watched the rain streak down the tall glass windows, each line like a countdown. 10 minutes passed, then 20. When the door finally opened, Ryan came out first. His face was pale, that salesman charm stripped clean. He didn't look angry, he looked exposed. Andrea followed, composed, holding the same envelope she'd walked in with. She thanked the committee for their patience, then announced that the review was adjourned pending a deeper inquiry into documentation irregularities. The words were professional. The silence after them wasn't. Ryan didn't look at me as he left the room. His steps were fast, but not fast enough to outrun what was coming. That evening, I went back to the office alone. The building smelled like dust and burnt coffee. I walked past the framed photos on the wall, groundbreaking ceremonies, ribbon cuttings, faces smiling under hard hats. Ryan's face was in every single one. I stopped in front of our very first photo, 2 kids in cheap jackets, holding the keys to a used pickup truck. Back then, all we had was hope. Somewhere along the line, he traded it for greed. The following week was a blur of phone calls, formal letters, and whispered rumors. City investigators showed up quietly, badges tucked away, notebooks open. They asked questions, lots of them. Maya handled the office with the calm of a surgeon, giving them access, forwarding files, never once looking surprised. Ryan tried calling me twice. I didn't answer. On the third try, he showed up at my door. It was late, maybe 10 p.m. The porch light flickered like it didn't want to see what was happening. He looked wrecked. The blazer was gone, sleeves rolled, tie loose. "Ethan," he said, voice cracking, "we need to talk." I didn't invite him in. I just crossed my arms. "Talk," he took a breath. "I don't know what you think you've done, but you've made it worse. For both of us, for both of us." I repeated, "You forged my name, Ryan. You funneled money through shell companies. You lied to the city. You lied to me." He looked down, rubbing the back of his neck like he used to when we were kids, and caught doing something stupid. "I didn't mean for it to go that far. It started small, just trying to float us when cash was tight. Then You kept going," I said, "because you liked it." He looked up at me, then eyes wet but sharp. "You think you're better than me? You sat there for years, watching me make things happen while you hid behind your spreadsheets. You needed me, Ethan. You still do. That's when I realized something. He wasn't sorry for what he'd done. He was sorry he got caught." I stepped closer. "You know what I need now, Ryan. Sleep, peace, and both come from knowing you can't hurt anyone else again." He tried to smile, but it broke halfway. "You'll destroy everything we built." "No," I said quietly. "You already did. I'm just making sure the ashes don't spread." He stared for a long moment, like maybe I'd changed my mind. Then he turned and walked away. His car door slammed. The headlights cut through the rain, then vanished down the street. That was the last time I saw him. 2 months later, Walker and Hale Contracting didn't exist anymore. The city revoked all active contracts under that name pending investigation. But because of the evidence Luis helped organize and Andrea's report, the blame didn't fall on the workers or the clients, or the company's reputation. It fell on the man who'd earned it. Ryan Hale was charged with fraudulent misrepresentation, forgery, and contract tampering. His lawyer called it a misunderstanding. The documents called it something else. When the hearing came, I sat in the back of the courtroom. Ryan walked in wearing a gray suit that didn't fit right. He looked smaller, older. The man who used to fill rooms with confidence now couldn't fill a chair without sinking into it. He didn't see me. Or maybe he did and chose not to. The judge read through the charges, the evidence, the fake vendors, the stolen funds. Ryan didn't deny it. He just stared at the table. When it was over, he signed a plea agreement. 3 years probation, restitution, and a permanent ban from bidding on city projects. The hammer fell. It didn't sound like victory. It sounded like an ending. After that, I rebuilt, quietly. I started a new firm, Walker Restoration Co. Small, transparent, steady. Same team, same trucks, different mission. We didn't chase big projects anymore. We fixed homes, schools, community centers, things that mattered. Sometimes new clients would ask if I was the same Walker from that other company. I'd smile and say, "I used to be." "Not anymore." Maya stayed. Luis became our official accountant. We never spoke Ryan's name out loud, but I'd catch glimpses of what he left behind. Empty chairs, unfinished dreams, memories that still sting. But healing is quiet work. It doesn't make noise like betrayal does. One evening, a year after everything, I got a letter. No return address, just my name written in block letters. Inside was a single photograph. Our old company logo, Walker and Hale, painted over on the side of a building. Beneath it, in shaky pen, someone had written, "You were right." No signature, but I didn't need one. I stood there a long time holding that picture. I didn't feel joy or sadness. Just a strange calm, like the world had exhaled and I was finally hearing the quiet after a long storm. I thought revenge would feel like winning. But what it really feels like is peace, because revenge isn't about getting even, it's about closure. And sometimes closure means walking away from the ruins you didn't cause without looking back.